And what I have pulled up on the left are the product goals for 410. So I'm going to start by demoing these, and then I'm going to move into some of the smaller UI tweaks or UI improvements. The first thing that I want to call out is that this improve vulnerability processing ticket is not going to make it into this release. And this is about false positives appearing for RPM packages on Linux hosts. So this was pushed to the next release to get more time to test the improvements. One of the larger additions is the new software page that we're looking at on the right. So previously, I'll go to dog food to diff the changes. Currently in dog food, we have this software modal that pulls up all the aggregates or all the installed software across hosts. That in the new release has been moved to its own page. And that is so we can continue to tout the improvements to vulnerability processing as one of the main value adds that we're investing in. Another change is that we are updating this aggregate list at an interval, meaning right now a host, this is my local machine, runs the software collection queries and updates its software inventory here when those queries are run. However, new software items that appear when the host collects software won't appear in this list until that interval is hit or that collection interval happens.
So is this a different interval than the normal host vitals interval?
Yes,
Does it need?
It does. It could be controlled with the same config, but
I think I would move for that unless there's a really strong reason not to, for the sake of reducing the config surface.
Yeah, no, and I've been having those discussions with Zach. There's inherent variability in when the host actually checks in, because say your laptop is closed or the host is offline. So there will never be a perfect situation in which all the hosts come back at the configured interval and then the aggregate software is updated for all the hosts at that interval.
You have to have two different configs.
Correct. I guess what I'm saying is the synchronous or the syncing that happens between all the hosts and the software page will always be or have the potential to be slightly delayed.
Can we see the new config that would be added for this?
For this update?
Well, I hear that we're adding new config.
So this update interval is the same interval that we're running vulnerability processing on. So that there's no new config for this.
Okay, so right now there's two configs, one for the host vitals interval and then one for the vulnerability processing interval.
Correct.
Gotcha. So that's already in the product. So we're not adding it here.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So then we don't need to. That was just me being out of the loop. Sorry. So currently it's two different things. In the future, we could always merge it into one. That would be a breaking change at this point because we've already shipped that config.
Right. The host config has existed. Yes.
Cool.
Are there more columns that can be exposed, like install date or last used?
Yeah. So There's a couple, depending on which we want to prioritize, there's a lot of different columns we could add here. One is the install date, like you said, Andrew. Another is last used. That last used information is only available for Mac applications. So it applies right now in OS Query to a very specific, I'll pull mine up. It would only appear for these software entries. Another thing that I've been talking to Guillaume about is more vulnerability related information. So what, and this is, I'll go into that in a second. What,
That's incorrect, isn't it? There should never be any listed here that don't have any vulnerabilities.
yeah, Reed, do you mind taking a note on that?
That'll be a bug we'll file, right? To be clear, and we'll prioritize before releasing.
Correct.
Okay.
To continue, Andrew, the severity of these vulns,
Nice.
and then that information, or the publish date of the vuln, or if the vuln has a known exploit, that kind of information.
Since this is a demo session, I think we want to be super clear about what is and what is not coming in this release. None of that's coming in this release or could be added to this release at this point, right?
Right.
Correct.
Cool. We do have, now do we have any of issues for those things in drafting, or are those kind of just in our heads?
We do. So
Okay.
specifically the risk related vuln information is queued up for drafting. So the severity and the known exploit.
And what about last use? Because I think that we do have an issue for that. I've seen it bumping around.
Yeah, last use is something that is spec'd out
Ready to code.
and ready to code. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to follow up with one more column question. Just, and this is, I think maybe there's not horizontal room, possibly, but there is on the other table that we display on a per device basis, we show the type of software.
Mhm.
So I saw something earlier that just said like GH, and my first thought was like, okay, what is it?
The software was
wonder-
GH.
Oh, that was on the rolled up one. But yeah, so now I can see it's a homebrew package, but when I'm looking at the software table on the software page, I don't know what it is. I'm also wondering, do we show tooltips on this page? Like we do to show the full bundle identifier on the other page?
We don't yet.
I think having it be consistent on both pages could be good. If there's not room for the column, I understand why we would leave that out for now. But I think the tooltip could be worth adding. But if we don't need to do, I don't think it doesn't have to happen this release. I don't see that as a blocker for releasing this unless anybody else thinks it might be.
No, but that is a good, or bringing, not parity, what's the opposite? Making those consistent on both pages makes sense.
I think we talked about that during drafting, but I'm just seeing it now all together. Those are two things jumping out to me.
So putting on a CPE kind of corpsec/corpsec hat, is there a way for us to see new software installs and then map that against the number of other software installs we see for that same program? So what percentage of my devices is this software present? Is it an outlier?
Yeah. Prevalence is super useful.
Like the percent of your fleet or the percent of the team that you're looking at on which.
Yeah, because you want to sort both ways, right? Like, oh, this is an issue on everything, and oh, this is suspicious because we've only got it on like one machine. It's useful in a lot of different places.
Right. I mean, I can't show this well right now because I only have 2 hosts.
On the
Installed.
homepage where we have the audit trail, even like right when you first log in, if you could show, hey, here's the new software that's been installed over the last whatever the given time period is, and here's how many other devices it's installed on.
Got it. And that's that new piece that's that new distinction.
I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know if there's an issue for it or not. Or
There is not, Andrew, as far as prevalence, but there is an issue about last used. If you want to file an idea issue about prevalence, I think that'd be a good idea. And by the way, I'm filing one about the bundle tooltip in the software type column as well, just as an idea to look at our next one of our drafting
Sweet.
sessions.
I'd love to.
Thanks,
you.
Brian. Wait, do you mind expanding on the prevalence part, Andrew? Is that something different than the number of hosts?
So it's the same thing. It's how common is this application within my infra, so, or my environment? Is this do I have one user and one user only across my entire enterprise that's got this installed? Maybe that's an outlier worth looking at.
Right.
Otherwise, is it a new install, but it's also installed on 500 other machines, so it's probably okay and a lower priority outlier to look at.
Got it. Okay. So it's the number of hosts plus its newness.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Okay.
And then that prevalence would, depending on, this is maybe a good segue. So yeah, if you want to expand on that further in the issue, Andrew, I think that could be helpful. And what we can expand it in terms of what it would mean in the UI more as we draft it out. But one thing that's related is if we were displaying a percentage prevalence, then I think as you change the filter there, so like if you were to switch teams, for example, right, and this is maybe a good way to go ahead and see how this behavior looks now. Switch to apples. So is that the name of our team? Oh, we're not on dog food. Gotcha.
Yeah, we're
So
local.
if we were then to change this, right? If we were to move one of our hosts over, so what's one of our hosts that we know has software on it, Noah. So if you transfer that to the Apples team, is it automatically going to update on the software page when I switch to the Apples tab? Good.
Yeah, so
And
I just
if we're showing prevalence, this would, I think my intuition would be that it would show me the prevalence of just the team. So just to put that in the air, I think we'd want to think about that when we're talking about.
Yeah, 100%. If it goes by team, should be prevalence in the team.
Guillaume, is there any value in understanding what software has been uninstalled if you start to see a trend in stuff being uninstalled?
Maybe not necessarily. Like I don't know that fits in like this view here. Like it's pretty rare that that's going to be a big issue that stuff is getting uninstalled unless it's security packages, right? So I would probably rely on the policies more than tracking what got removed, right? Like have a policy that checks that your EDR is installed, I think is valuable. Tracking what gets uninstalled, maybe not. Because keep in mind, like we have a lot of like Mac stuff here on the screen, but on the Windows side, even when Windows updates run, like there's uninstalls and reinstalls, and it's could be a little noisy.
Good point.
If someone came to us with that use case too, a workaround, it's not even a workaround, like it's just a way you can do it, I guess, is we can tell them like, look, presumably there's, and actually I feel like this would be a good thing to know more intimately, but presumably there's a way to see those events, the uninstall events with OS query, and then like write those to.
Well, there's differential queries for these tables, right? So if you're sending the data somewhere else, then you could track that.
Gotcha. So if there's a way to write a query to
installs,
and then you can get that into your Splunk.
Well, it's not uninstalls, right? But you just look at, okay, what's there, and then the differentials, right? Oh, these three things are gone, so they were uninstalled.
right. And the scheduled queries, you can't. There's that differential snapshot mode.
Does everybody on the call understand exactly how you would do that? Not necessarily the SQL syntax, but where you would go in the UI
To do what, Mike?
to set up that differential query, just so that we're all like, since we're all here, it might be useful to help make sure we all understand how that part of the product works.
Yeah, I think it's only under scheduled queries, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
And then it's in advanced, right?
Yeah. And right now you would have to pick, there's differential, that gives you the delta. And you would not want to ignore removals because that's what you're interested in.
Exactly. So
and then you'd have to have a query already. So you would then have to like exit out this modal being like, oh, I got to go write the query. And then you go write the query and you would do like select star from apps and whatever else you were interested in installs for. You come back here, you select the query, you pick differential, and then know if you click preview data, just to make sure that we all are in sync, you would get
Well,
something
yeah.
that says snapshot, but ideally it would. That'd be a nice to have, is if you have differential selected, if it showed you an example of the differential.
Yeah, that's a good issue.
Yeah, I'll track that one as a future request. This is add scheduled query modal.
I see we have some fun double chevron there too. Reed, do you mind tracking that one as well?
Yeah, I'll write it up right now.
Nice. Thank you.
Oh, nice. It's a single one until you click on it. Then it's like cat ears just pop up.
Right. Blast off. Any more questions about the software page? All right. The next issue we're going to chat about is the aggregate Munki and MDM data. So this is a roll up of, it might be difficult for me to show in this environment, of the information, and I'll pull it up on dog food's going to be better. Of the MDM enrollment information. So whether or not a device is enrolled in MDM and the Munki version. So this is kind of a first crack at aggregating this information across hosts and having a simple dashboard in Fleet.
So we only show Munki version if you have Munki, the plugin enabled on that host. Sorry, let me try that again. We only show this Munki version -- if your device is using Orbit or otherwise has the Mac admins extension installed, right?
No, we're actually running, and this is a bug, we're running the query on all hosts regardless of, we're not detecting if they're using Orbit or just plain OS query.
What way does that manifest as a bug to the end user or operator?
Only in the logs. So it creates this log, extra log data cannot, or some sort of error, no table found for Munki.
When you say it's a
info.
bug, does it track already now?
Yes,
Okay. And that's something we'll fix prior to the release.
yes.
Okay.
But
in the UI, what gets displayed?
the actual version gets displayed.
So Noah doesn't have Munki installed.
Right. Although I did at one point in my prior laptop, and then I did some transfer over to my new laptop, which could be the reason why this is showing up here.
So we don't know that this works unless, Reed, have you manually tested this with and without Munki?
No, not yet.
Okay, I think we need to do that prior to releasing this feature.
Yeah, that's something I'm hitting today.
Okay, great.
Yeah, this feature is a good example of one that would be most easily looked at in dog food.
Great.
Yeah, especially since we are going to push Munki via simple MDM in our new set of policies. So we will always have Munki running.
So there's a few possibilities here. I think there's maybe 4. One possibility is that, let's say there's enough people on this call. So let's say Tony has no Munki. Tony's using vanilla OS query to monitor his device. So he doesn't have the Mac admins plugin. And then Tony does not have Munki, right? And maybe Guillaume is using vanilla OS query, but Guillaume does have Munki. And then, and let's say Noah is using the Mac admins plugin, but does not have Munki. And then Andrew is using the Mac admins plugin and does have Munki. So all 4 of those are cases I think we want to make sure we understand the behavior of. Do we know how that's supposed to work in all 4 of those cases?
Yeah, so right now, there's no distinction between whether or not the Mac admins extension is active. We're just running the query
But do we
always.
always display monkey version or not?
The
Because
expected behavior for this is that this should not happen. So if there's no monkey version, that information shouldn't even be displayed on the host details page.
Okay, so is this a bug?
Yes, this is
Okay.
a bug.
Do we have it tracked?
I'm not sure. Reed, do you mind checking?
I'll check and write it up if it's not.
Thank you. And are you good? Did you follow those 4 different things to check out?
Yeah, I'm gonna refer back to this video after
Okay,
this
good.
to make sure I'm checking all those.
Thank you.
Right. Although only what I was trying to explain, Mike, is only 2 apply now, because we're not making the distinction of whether or not the Mac admins extension exists.
So then testing with and without, what should we see? What should Reed see when you test it without the Mac admins extension?
There should be no monkey version.
Okay, so that would be the
UI.
thing QA then, is we should make sure that that's true. If without the Mac admins extension, with and without monkey. Well, we don't even have to check with and without monkey because there's no way it would know about monkey, right? But we want to know. So it's really only 3 things to test. If the Mac admins extension is not there, then monkey version should not be on the host details page. Is that right? Got it. Cool.
All right, going back to the actual dashboard. Something new is this platform filter. So there's a UI that can be applied to this dashboard page, which will filter all the cards underneath it according to platform. And this is because that Munki and MDM information is only collectible on Mac OS
So you want to show us what changes?
workstations.
Nice.
So this is worth checking out, Reed. This is some weird behavior in which it might be related to why my host is showing that dash, dash, dash. It looks like it thinks I have Munki installed, but is unable to actually detect the version.
Just to double check, are you running off of main right now?
Yes.
Okay.
And then it looks like we're missing an empty state here.
And that's in
Because-
Figma.
Yeah.
Cool. And is it, well, so let's see, it was today. So tomorrow is release day. Cool.
Correct.
So I guess the 2 bugs we're seeing here on this screen, one is related to what we saw before. There's a missing version, or like the state where something is wrong with Noah's version of Munki. This is not, this makes the fleet look broken though. So we should never display what's on the left here on the screen. It should never have like version blank. So we need to understand why that's happening, or like, I guess, and then display something different. I think we don't necessarily have a spec for what this is supposed to look like. But at the very least, I would expect it to be like dash, 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 like we're showing on the other page, if that is a condition it can end up in. And then on the right-hand side here, there's an empty state that's in Figma that we spec'd out for this, that's not being displayed if all hosts are unenrolled on the current team. Is that right?
If there's no, right now, there's no MDM data at all.
But
And
right now
that's
we're
when-
looking at the Apple's team.
Correct.
So it's both, so it's actually just on the team basis that we're seeing the bug. The empty state might work at the top level, we don't know.
Got it.
So there's a few bugs there potentially, or it's, I guess we don't actually know what the exact bug is there. Or do you think you have enough with this video to be able to run with that and then get to where you can test each of the cases we tried?
Yeah, this should be fine.
So on the orange, can you go to the orange team actually? Okay, so unable to detect Munki versions. Why? Whatever, that's our empty state. So that is being displayed because on the oranges team, there are no Mac devices, but there are one actually, right?
Yeah, so I just transferred this, and this is a simulated host.
It's Linux.
No, it's Mac OS. Another reason why it would be helpful to use dog food here is because I'm not completely confident in what the engineering team has added to these simulated hosts and how accurate the data is reflected.
How would you, so in dog food, I think probably the best idea would be to have a team that's for like actual company owned laptops, and then a separate team for people who, you know, it's a VM, you know, testing stuff or whatever. Then we know at least the company one only has like real Macs and it's actual stuff that's being used. I think that would make the most sense.
I think we can do that, Guillaume. Currently, there's no simulated stuff on dog food. I don't think there's a reason to have simulated stuff on dog food. Well, there may be for demos and stuff, but right now I think there's actually nothing simulated on dog food.
Yeah, so you know, we just make a team for probably a team for company owned, a team for BYOD, but it's a real device, and then a team for simulated stuff if we want to add more to it. I think that makes sense.
I think that can work. You know, let's maybe take that up separately, because
Yeah.
I think we also currently we use the teams as part of the demo, so we should talk through like how's that even
Yeah.
because we have a team called production servers. We don't actually have any of our servers enrolled right now. We do have some servers we could enroll, which would be nice.
Yeah.
So okay, so there's some stuff here, and then Noah, you were gonna maybe show. You want to show what Windows and Linux look like?
Yep. Well, actually, before I move on, this is confusing right now, but do folks have questions on what is expected to be happening on the screen?
Do tooltips match Figma?
Yeah, Reed, I don't think you've gotten a chance to check out this issue or these improvements yet, which
is a little surprising because we're queuing stuff every time a card moves east, right? Is that the plan?
That is the plan. I'm not really up to speed on that yet. So that's an improvement that I can make. But it will be tested before it goes out.
So if we're doing that during the sprints, then we will have already caught some of these kind of issues before the last day before the release, hopefully.
Correct.
And when it'll be fresher in engineers' minds because they'll have just implemented it if we can catch it sooner.
Yeah.
And ideally, engineers are catching this kind of stuff themselves, but yeah, I mean, there's always stuff that it's easy to miss when it's your eyes doing the coding in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, so can we start that next release?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's the expectation now as well.
Cool.
So when the user selects Windows and Linux, we're not displaying any additional information currently.
Makes sense. And so Linux, same deal? Because this is just a new UI to have it centered there with the Linux little logo. Cool, that all looks like I would expect. And if you do vl host, does that work as expected? There's this filter to Linux. It's got Linux selected. I go back. What about if I do a team filter here, Apples, and then I choose Linux, and then I hit view all hosts, and that works as expected. And I click hosts in the tab bar, and that bug is fixed. No, it's not fixed. It is fixed. So this is the expected behavior.
Correct. Right now there's the
That's
sticky.
actually cool.
Yeah.
So that triggers the Linux filter. The sidebar is updated. Used to, there was a bug where it would show 2 hosts, but that is fixed now because it was acting like the team filter wasn't there if you clicked the tab bar. So good to see that that's fixed as well. Cool. Thank you for drilling into that. And I know, just on a related note, on this screen, we had gotten, at some point we had drafted out getting rid of the one new host thing. I think that's a pretty small change. Have we gotten that? What's the status of that one? Just that's
ready for engineering. It's and I'm not going to get into the details, but yeah, it's ready.
So it's
Ready
just
for
removing
engineering.
it from the UI, right? That one new host thing.
In addition to that, the counts are going to have to be brought into offline, because right now those are two separate categories. So to get this kind of, it's hard to see now. It'll be easier to see on dog food. Right now there, and this works out, but we always want this count to be equal to the total count.
Right.
That sometimes doesn't happen when there's a new host.
So if a host has been offline for more than 30 days, Fleet considers it MIA,
Not offline.
not offline, and it's actually both.
Right. Or that's the improvement is to include it in both. All right.
Questions or
Any,
concerns?
yeah, before I move on.
You want to try something we can start doing a little bit? No, you want to shrink the narrowness of the screen a little bit. Bring it down to about 768. Let's just see how painful it it is, so we get a reality check. Okay, so it looks like so it cuts off right around what, 768, 780.
Here we're at 70s. We're at 777 now.
Okay,
We've got
so
a
maybe we
little
can,
bit.
where does it start to look okay? All right, that's good enough for now. So that's our width. So if we turn on our filter, let's just do a quick sanity check, make sure it looks the platform filter and these sections and the empty states look good. So the card stack, there's a lot of white space. Is that intended?
That's not intended.
Can we
I
follow up
imagine.
for that read?
I imagine it's coming. They're using the equal height here.
I think we probably didn't even wireframe this. So like, this is something, you know, it's not like this needs to be a blocker, but I just want to, oh, what happened there? Actually, look at that gray bar shrink. And then maybe that was just an artifact from Zoom.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't see anything, but obviously I see the white space once we get to thinness where it goes like vertical instead of side by side.
Yeah. Here.
I think, yeah, right. That looks a little bit unusual. I don't think it's like a release blocking bug, but I think we should file it as a bug to just like make that. And do we have some guidance we can give to the team to be able to know how big to make that bottom padding?
Yeah, right now it's supposed to be as large or as tall as the tallest card. So for example, the cutoff for both should be around here.
Ah, I see, but that gets harder on, well, actually can't think of how to do that in CSS, so I can see why that's probably a problem.
Yeah, we'll get that.
I think we don't, yeah, if we can follow something for it or not. Actually, I think it's probably not something we need to hang up on. Sorry, I just wanted to get a look at it. Cool. And does anything, the other screen we added is the software table. Would you mind doing the same thing? No, just on that screen.
Yeah.
Starts to, cool. So vulnerabilities, now it looks like we spill over the word vulnerabilities. What I've seen done, and I've done myself in a lot of projects, is like have media queries kick on and then like shorten the word to vulns when you get to a certain width. That's doable all with CSS and HTML.
Yes, the expectation right now is that none of these pages are supposed to be shrunk further than 1200 pixels, and that's changing in an upcoming release.
Okay,
it has not changed yet.
Cool. Well, then ignore me. Sorry, I was just getting ahead of myself. That's exciting.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to move on to the next item, and that is the vulnerability automations piece. So
before we leave the other one, do we have additional work to do to roll up Munki and MDM, or is this the completion of our customer promise to the transportation company?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So the Munki and MDM information is part of a customer request to roll up all kinds of host information in an aggregate fashion. MDM enrollment and Munki versions do not fill that entire request. There's still disk space information that was requested, Munki warnings and Munki errors information that's requested, and host check-in time that was also requested.
Awesome. You are very smart to remember all of those things, Noah. Awesome. So we'll see that in our key date. Get that done this quarter, right?
Correct.
Sweet. Sorry to interrupt.
Going past is Munki enrolled? Are we planning on surfacing any information about the Munki jobs that this device was a part of? Like if it was a part of a specific Munki job to install XYZ software, will we show that?
Yeah, so that's also part of the request, and it has to do, I think, with mainly the errors and the warnings for those Munki jobs. So when those, or how I imagine we'll prioritize these things is first we'll surface when things go wrong with Munki. So on the host level, these are the Munki errors and warnings, roll that up. And then a more generic, these are all the Munki jobs that are running on the host in some form on the host details page.
Gotcha. I think I remember that same company that made the request talking about understanding what percentage of installs that were part of a job have been completed, whether the device was offline or just what percentage of that job is now complete. Is that going to be part of the errors, or?
No, that would be a good thing to roll up.
It's all Munki jobs and their percent completion or their percent success. Is that something that we will remember as part of key dates, or is that something we should track?
We should track that.
I've heard it a couple of different times. I think we heard it at another company that might be a Polygon.
Can someone on this call track that? I still have an open tab where I'm finishing another issue. I would throw it at you, Reed, but I'm guessing you probably have some that you're in the middle of as well.
Yeah, I can track it down. I'm sorry, I had to get up from my computer for a second. Could you repeat the issue?
It is, so I'll give you the super short version. It'll be in the video if you need more when you're doing it. But I think it's not quite, there's some aspects that a customer has requested of this rolling things up to the top level that is not done yet. So we're going to see them by the end of, and we'll have them implemented by the end of the quarter. But there's another piece, which is Munki jobs, which is not something that was explicitly part of that customer promise. And we want to remember to do it. So I think that means filing an IDEA issue and tagging it with the product waiting on project about surfacing Munki jobs on the logged in homepage.
Got it.
And I think it's Munki jobs and their status in terms of how many hosts have successfully had the job run versus hosts that didn't. Thanks, Reed. Hey, and so related to actually just one last thing on this front, because all of these roll-ups are across teams. I know we looked at this before, but just to make sure we've all seen it. So any of the stuff we're talking about, if I go use the team filter, we need to have the empty state working properly for that team. We need to have the empty state working properly at the top level. And then the data will be filtered correctly for the team in each case.
Correct. It's just, yeah, it's very difficult to know what is actually going wrong here.
And we'll figure that out and before we release and make sure that it's fully working. And we have kind of the different permutations we need to test with Munki MDM, it looks like we're missing an empty state, just to recap, as far as
Yeah.
that's the remaining work there.
Are we leveraging the Mac admins
Yes.
extension? Of this?
We are.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where all this information is coming from.
Gotcha.
And that
Right.
company we were just talking about has deployed it themselves. So not as part of
Gotcha.
Fleet's installers. They're using base or plain OS query plus self-deployed Mac admins.
So I'm guessing we also have Puppet info as well.
Correct.
Cool.
All those
Awesome.
tables. Yeah.
And whether you're using vanilla OS query and you've added a dash of Mac admins, or if you're using Fleet's installers that bundle the Mac admins flavor, you're good to go. As long as the flavor is present, you can taste it.
Gotcha.
All right. The next issue we're going to look at is this vulnerability webhook modal. So the last release of Fleet included the policy automations feature, which several of us have checked out Tines as a way to pump failed policies from Fleet into Slack. The same, I wish I could, because I can't trigger a vulnerability. The same concept can be applied to new vulnerabilities in the coming release. So if I head to this, oh, go ahead.
Do we really need Tines for that on the policies? Or we could use policy automations and a web. I guess it'll look nicer, but we can probably still do it to Slack without third-party stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You could build some sort of Slack app that receives the webhook.
But if you wanted to not write code, Tines is a way to do this without writing any code.
Okay, cool.
So here in the manage automations modal on the software page, and Reed, do you mind? There's some missing explanation here that's in Figma that's not present in the modal.
So a new bug report, we're missing something that's in Figma as far as explainer text in the manage automations modal, right?
Correct.
Cool.
Mhm.
So as of now, Fleet will send a webhook if a new vulnerability shows up on any hosts, meaning if the NVD publish date has happened in the last 2 days.
So we don't have the drop down currently to show
Correct.
you like the time frame.
Yeah. So there's the default 2-day period. And the reasoning for that is to reduce the amount of noise by reducing the number of webhooks sent. And then the second would be an assumption that most organizations are tracking to some degree vulnerabilities that have come up in the past. So this is
even if they're not, right? Like if you never did anything about this thing that's 6 years old, do you want to get a notification about it? Probably not, right?
Right.
So I think it works both for companies that are actually quite up to date and those that are so out of date, but it doesn't really matter because the things are like, it's not that big a risk or whatever, but the new stuff is important. So it doesn't get worse, right? So I think that's perfect decision for now with the default 2 days. Like that's super good.
And for context, just as far as understanding how this developed, I think this was a good idea from Noah based on the feedback from a computer networking company that is one of our customers that is currently getting everything in a Vuln feed, that they're then having to look at each individual ticket and compare whether that vulnerability exists on their fleet anytime a new Vuln comes in. So this basically alleviates that pressure of like, okay, so instead of doing that by hand, now we'll create tickets for you only based on when you actually have a new vulnerability that shows up that also matches software that's actually installed in your organization.
Right. I'm gonna pull up a visual.
Concept of kind of the risk, the vulnerability risk score, or being able to filter my automations. I only want to get automations for high risk vulnerabilities, or
Yeah, so that was taken into consideration as well, and we chose not to. We chose to maybe introduce that later if that is something that comes up as a request in terms of filtering which vulns are actually sent out.
What we heard
For
from
sure it will come up as a request, but it's fine not to have it now because this is a new feature. But there's definitely people that will say, like, even internally, if we were using this on dog food on all of our laptops, I would probably say, yeah, I want to know if CVSS is like 7 and above or something like that.
there's the severity that comes from the vulnerability feeds. We've gotten the feedback from analysts that they don't trust that anyways, that they look at them all anyways, or they use other rules to filter those vulns.
Yeah,
Like,
but there's a big difference between like an investment bank that's got a team of 30 people doing vulnerability management and like a smaller place, right? It's like you may trust it or not if you don't have enough people to go over everything individually. There's still a threshold, right? CVSS 1. Do you want a Jira ticket for that? Probably not, right? But maybe you'll say, well, Heartbleed was like a 6 and then got upgraded to a 10. We would have caught that. But yeah, so I understand both points, but for sure we will need this at some point.
what we heard from a Fortune 100 company is that they look at everything, right?
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah,
think
Fortune 100, yeah, I agree.
we want to be able to add more. We want to be able to add more filtering, but we want to resist as much as possible adding filtering that we think adds value before we know it adds value, and then have
That
a
makes
set of
sense.
defaults which basically create as few tickets as possible. And that's why the 2-day thing is here. So good call on the CVSS 1. So that's helpful to know.
I've got one quick question. So when let's say for instance, the host is offline, but it then it comes back later. So does it fire an additional webhook that includes just that host, or does it include all the hosts that match?
Yeah, so I think the answer to your question is the host that's offline will never be included in a webhook request because only one will get sent out for each vulnerability. So at the time when that vulnerability appears, it's going to send out all the hosts that have checked in, and we know that that vulnerability is on, but any host that comes back later will not be included in any future.
Differently from policies, because with policies we do handle flapping, right? So if we have a policy that says thou shalt not have Zoom installed, and that policy runs, it creates a ticket about my computer and anyone else that does have Zoom installed. If I then go and I uninstall Zoom, it runs again, and then it runs again, but this time I have Zoom installed again, it would create a new ticket about that, right?
Correct.
But
So,
here, that's not the case, right? So once it's fired about a particular CVE, it never creates another ticket again about that CVE, no matter what.
that's correct. And that's all limited by the 2 days period. So I guess that's the biggest, or that's the main difference between the policy piece or the policy automation and the vulnerability automation is the policy automations are ongoing, always seeing, did this host go from not answering the policy to failing, or from passing to failing continuously. For the vulnerability automation, the qualifying factor for the automation to be sent is, was this vulnerability published in the last 2 days? Once that window is gone, then that vulnerability won't, or an automation won't be triggered.
Fleet will never create a second ticket about the same CVE, no matter what the state of your fleet is.
Yeah, so right now we're relying on folks to go back in and check in fleet for any new hosts.
Right.
It's probably going to be
That
go ahead.
matches how they're doing it today too, just for what it's worth. So like or from what we've heard is from some customers is they have a feed, they'll create a ticket about a new CVE, and then there's sort of an ad hoc human process to go like run with that ticket, apply, decide what needs to happen. And then like, once you're done, you close the ticket and it's just sort of like gone.
Yeah. The only thing I would be concerned about is if that's not clearly communicated, because it's a change in the behavior, it can lead to a lot of confusion. I could see like something drops on a Friday, a lot of people are offline, right? And then, we run a query and we don't get up, we're under the impression that these are all the hosts when it's really not.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's a really good point. Tony, could you file an issue about a follow-up, like an idea issue to follow up about that?
I can't.
I don't think, let's think through. So if it would be best to avoid blocking the release with this, but if we do not block the release, will this be a breaking change if we added some kind of window, like collection window later, right? Like if it actually checks multiple times for hosts that might have the vulnerability before firing the automation, like, is that a breaking change for people? I don't think so. I think it's additive. I think it's an enhancement, right? We wouldn't have to do Fleet version 5 for that.
No, the behavior would be changed. Oh, go ahead, Tony.
Well, I'm saying if it's so if let's say that we did fire another one, then it would create a separate ticket, right?
Correct.
Not currently, that wouldn't, right? Or like right now, we only create one ticket per CVE. And what I was suggesting is that instead of just looking once on that Friday, we could have it scanned for, be a little bit smarter, or like try to cast a wider net for hosts that might be online, like check more than once, potentially. Does that make sense? That's one way to do it. I think there's other ways to solve the same problem.
Yeah, I think we probably just need to think it through. Like, I think if we document it and we just clearly say, hey, this is how it works now, then we can, circle back to it later and figure out like what's the best way to make it not break anything else.
Yeah.
So on the documentation side, let's maybe approach that separately. I think that's something to bring up with Kelvin.
Okay.
On the ticket that you're creating, on the issue you're creating, Tony, I guess just to make sure we're on the same page, the thing that I think would be really useful to capture is that Friday story.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that that says it really, really well. I just noticed we were at time. Sorry for talking so much, guys. Anything else we need to look at?
There's plenty more. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to send a couple links in the chat so folks can check it out on their own time. This first one is the goals issue. So this is going to encompass the main features coming in the next release. And then I'm going to send a link to the engineering release board. Everything in these two columns, quality assurance and ready for a release, are also likely to make it in. And these include more. Oh, go ahead.
Are we gonna update dog food?
Yeah, after this call, if that's Andrew, is that okay if we do a dog food update?
We're good to go.
Okay.
And then somebody on this call, I think, I don't know who doesn't already have a ticket they're working on, but if somebody could add to our release process in the handbook about that, about the fact that we now deploy dog food at the beginning of the freeze, and that we give the sales team an FYI about any demoing that might be going on. I don't think we don't need to ask for permission before deploying dog food. That can just be our process. We deploy it.
Yeah, either Reed or I will do that, because I imagine product will own this meeting, and that will be the main benefit for deploying to dog food, is having it ready to go for this call.
Got it. And when you say do it, you mean update the handbook?
Yes. Yeah.
Got it. And then whoever actually, and Ben Edwards is currently the person who deploys dog food.
Correct. I'll just see if there's a DRI that we can point to.
There is.
Okay.
Ben. Great work, Noah. Thank you. And good questions and feedback from everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.